Hey, welcome to another episode of L&D Cafe, a no fluff, actionable podcast for L&D professionals. The podcast is brought to you by iMocha, and my name is Pranav, and I am the host of this podcast. Now, in this episode, I am in conversation with Sunny Varma, and I have to say that this was a blast. This conversation was insightful for me personally, and I'm sure that this is going to help you as well in just broadening your understanding about what the whole ecosystem of learning and development is all about. So, just to introduce Sunny a little bit, Sunny has a vast experience in the domain of learning and development. He has actually been in the industry for more than 20 years, right? And his expertise lies, it stretches across talent management, talent acquisition, organization culture, and so on and so forth. He has worked with organizations like Adani Group, Jaguar Group, Sahara Group, Concentric, Saffron Global, and currently he is leading the learning and development organizational development function at JBM Group. What I find fascinating about Sunny personally is his appetite or is his curiosity to learn. He is just so curious and he really believes in learning even despite his vast experience. I also think that he is opinionated. He does not want to conform to the status quo. He really wants to challenge the status quo. He really wants to put his own thinking, and he really wants to bring about a change, which is a rare quality to find. So that's pretty much about Sunny, and I hope you find this episode super useful and helpful. And please share your feedback with me because that's going to help me make this show a lot better. Thanks so much and enjoy the show. Hi Sunny, welcome to the show.
Hi, hi.
So Sunny, let's just go back to when we first met, and you said something which has stayed with me till date, which is that L&D professionals, most of them, and with a lot of respect and love and care, you made a statement which was something like L&D professionals tend to carry a hammer everywhere, and they are looking for a nail to hit on. And the analogy basically, if I had to explain it, it basically means that we are trying to solve every problem with training, or with a very templatized solution. And so that is what we'll be talking about today. This whole notion of L&D professionals being treated as order takers, and they are not being really considered as strategic partners. And so I just want to get us started off with the question: what is wrong in being an order taker? Why should an L&D professional actually consider, or even organizations for that matter, actually consider this change or this transition of moving them from being order takers to strategic partners? Why care at all?
Cool. Thanks, Pranav. And I think let me go back to our conversation where I said, not for L&D professionals, but for training professionals, so to say, that when you have something like a hammer in your hand, everything appears as a nail to you. Uh, so that was a context where I said that not everything in this world can be solved through training. And especially when we talk about an L&D professional, there are a lot of other arrows, which are there, which can be used in terms of solving issues, or maybe for developing people. Apart from looking at only training purely. So that was what I spoke about, and yes, you spoke about order takers, and from order takers to being a strategic partner. I would say that yes, why not? Uh, See, again, it's a perspective. I think that if you want the seat at the table, and you have a viewpoint which is for some benefit to the organization, then I think it is time for people to think on those lines, especially the L&D professionals. Uh, when you're not a strategic partner and only an order taker, then there are very high chances that the leadership team or the business team they have a lot of assumptions with respect to the learning needs of the people,
Mm-hmm.
because they are not, every time they're not qualified to have a valid perspective of L&D. That's one. Second is that the L&D value proposition, when we talk about, that gets eroded, because at the end of the day, of course, being an L&D professional, you have to talk about L&D. But then I think you have to look at from a macro perspective also, from a org perspective, from a business perspective, and then understand that how you kind of try to solve something or develop something. So I think a wide array of areas, a wide array of competencies, skills are required to qualify as a strategic partner and being an L&D professional at the same time. So yeah, so that's what I think about. And when we talk about being a strategic partner, we need to understand that it has to be long term. Uh, when you're not a strategic partner and just an order taker, you are almost dealing with a tactical quick kills, and you don't have a long term perspective for the organization and the business, which has to be there. Once you have that long term perspective or macro perspective, overall aim of where you want to reach as an organization, then you can do justice to your contribution to the industry and the business. So yeah, that was my thought.
Yeah, makes sense. So, I mean, I do want to pull this thread maybe a little bit later of long term thinking, but going back to the part A of your answer, do you think this this mindset mindset shift of being a strategic partner? Do you think it needs to come from the leadership team to the L&D team, or should it be vice versa? Is it top down or bottom up according to you?
See, it doesn't really matter if it is top down or bottoms up. What we need to understand as L&D professionals, that are we ready to take that leap? Am I ready? I mean, before convincing the upper management or talking about certain things which you want as a right, we need to understand that am I ready? Do I have that adequate business knowledge, industry knowledge, knowledge of workplace, to talk, have that vocabulary with the
Hmm.
business guys. See, at the end of the day, we need to understand and accept the fact that if your business is good, your organization is running, that is the time where your contribution matters a lot, because then you are the one responsible for accelerating it even higher. But at the end of the day, you can't think of L&D in isolation. It has to be aligned with the business. Your learning strategy should be aligned with the business strategy. And that is the reason your understanding of business acumen, for a lending is very, very imperative. That's how I look at it. And you have to be a thought leader, have a point of view. Uh, Again, coming back to, you can't just be an order taker. You have to be a strategic partner, that how you're solving certain problems. When
Right.
we talk about acting as a provider, in those key decisions of understanding how it works, how it adds value to the business, uh, how we are taking the business from A to B, that is how you can create value for yourself. And like I said earlier also, the L&D value proposition is in your hands. If we can't show that in terms of value, then of course you remain as an order taker only,
Right.
which
Right.
happens in a lot of cases.
Right. So I definitely want to come back to value and ROI, because that is also a very very interesting conversation. But like you spoke about business acumen, and it's clear that you're someone who believes that L&D professionals, their area of expertise is not purely training. They need to have business acumen. They need to know the department or the business unit for which they are going to solve the problem. So, if you could, through a hypothetical example or through a real example, just share how, let's say me Pranav has joined an organization and I am expected to solve, again, we can take up a made up fictitious problem. If I'm expected to solve that problem, how do I go about tactically in understanding the business acumen, because I don't have that acumen so far. My previous learning or my previous expertise is purely learning and development. So how do I adapt and how do I gain that business acumen that you spoke of?
So well, it's no rocket science, honestly speaking. Normally, what happens is that I have seen a lot of companies which have their training department, so to say, who they fashionably called as L&D departments. That's more of a fashion statement in the corporate rather than value adders. Uh, but you said that a person. So what happens is that normally we see the training department or that sort of domain. They are running around onboarding or certain trainings which are more of a compliance based trainings. Those are not. So we have to think beyond those. We have to think beyond those onboarding inductions and compliance trainings. We have to think about how we can align ourselves with the businesses. Like for example, if I'm talking to a CEO of a business, then I have to understand that if I use my learning lingo, that will not be of any help to us compared to if I get into his shoes and start talking the business vocabulary. So the entire viewpoint changes. So we have to be very careful, cautious, and conscious of what we are talking about. And there are a lot of ways of asking the same question. It totally depends on how you kind of put it across. From a perspective that the person who's sitting across, who's a business guy, he understands. So it's just the way, suppose you're talking to a CEO and you're talking that this is my learning agenda. No, I think let's start with what is his business agenda and then how I can plug in my learning agenda to his business agenda. Like I said earlier, also, the value and alignment is very, very important. So the value, the perceived value of L&D and the alignment of L&D is very important. Plus, you have to be a partner with the business. So these are two essential things which we need to take care of. Otherwise, no matter you have explicitly well thought L&D strategy, you have explicit governance models, you have robust measurement plans, or you have some clear articulated processes, uh, everything will fall short because you are not collaborating, partnering with the business. You are not, putting business before your L&D strategy. So again, that's what when I meant tactical and strategic. When I'm talking tactical, I'm talking very, very kind of quick killish mode of doing things. More of a checklist, more of a vanilla way of thinking. But when you talk about strategic, you are actually adding to the big strategic business plan of the company and how you are contributing there.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that this is super juicy. So, like just to double click on this a little bit, right? I mean, I just make up an example here. Let's say that the sales team is struggling to close the deals. Let's again make up a fictitious number that let's say that their closure rate is 7%, and the CEO wants this closure rate to at least go from 7% to 14%. So this is the business problem that the CEO has. Now, how does the L&D team build on top of this problem?
No, I think what taking about a sales domain is very, very easy, target to talk about because you can simply have a look at the numbers and that's how you can, have a conversion. So I think so. I have dealt with a lot of interventions which were targeting sales teams in my career. So we need to understand so that the design of that intervention in terms of understanding the problem, diagnosing the problem right is the first step. When you speak about conversion 7% to 14%, where we are, what is the value, what are the volume, a complete diagnostic study on where we are and where we want to be should be there. Normally what happens is that like I said, that we start going on a hunt and that witch hunt takes us nowhere. So a good amount of time and effort in designing something to solve that issue is important without keeping training in mind.
Right.
Understand this is a problem area. Now, how we can solve? Now, when you start thinking on those lines, then you actually start thinking on 70-20-10, experiential learning, the importance of exposure, education, experience, lot of other elements which can get into play while designing.
Sorry to just cut you off here, Sunny. There was something that you said which I can't get enough of, and just would love for you to elaborate on it, which is the diagnosis part, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, how does that diagnosis take place? How do we approach diagnosis? And you could answer this strategically or tactically in any way.
No. I think I'll talk about very practical here,
Yeah,
where, like I said, in one of the real-time cases which I talk about,
yeah.
when we did the diagnostic study in terms of understanding the lifestyle, the entire day in the life of a sales guy,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of field accompaniment calls. So as an L&D person or a trainer or so to say, whatever learning partner we're talking about, it's part of that diagnostic study to not just read figures, but let's spend a day, let's have a field accompaniment call with the sales teams at different levels, at different geographies. Let's see, and a lot of material, lot of raw data will come into picture, which was not been seen by only looking at figures. I've just given this one very, very, very raw example of field accompaniment calls, but that is an important element of a diagnostic study.
Okay.
And then we can see how we can have those sort of improvements in terms of the daily approach of the sales team or the sales guy, or that, let's say, a geography for that matter. And accordingly we can design something. See, at the end of the day, a selling cycle or a buying cycle remains same. The fundamentals, theories, concepts, frameworks, strategies remains fundamentally as a concept remains same. What matters is that we can see that what will work where.
Right.
I as a doctor, for example, I take an example of a doctor here. I have studied medicine and I know anything and everything about. I'm a general physician, but still, I have to have that diagnostic done very diligently of a patient to understand what is the real challenge and what will work.
Right.
Just because I have studied medicine, I just can't apply all the medicines and all the treatments on everybody.
Right. Right.
It's as simple as that.
So do you mean again, I'm intentionally trying to get super tactical here, and I hope you're okay with that. Do you think that would mean attending the sales call with that particular salesperson, or would it mean physically spending time in their office?
Yes.
Okay.
So starting from there to maybe there is a you can have certain formats in terms of understanding the perspective of the sales guy. It can, and why we are looking at the performance of the sales guy here, a lot of things can come up. For example, maybe on the lines of demand and supply, maybe something on the lines of the product quality. So we have to think big. We have to have a broad mind in terms of understanding everything. Normally, what happens is when we talk about going from a 7% to 14%, we only think there is something lacking in the sales team,
Hmm.
uh, which is not true every time, 100% of the time. There are a lot of other factors in play, and with an open mind, let's have a look at that. And I have seen when you do these sort of diagnostic studies very diligently and efficiently, you come to know a lot about what works and what doesn't work. And those are the areas which are the real triggers or the game changers for the entire portfolio.
Right. I think one thing that just came to me is that the skill of big picture thinking is so essential for an L&D leader, because as you said, maybe it's not the sales guy's fault. Maybe it could be the collateral that he's been given, or the PPT that he's been given, or maybe it's the product. The problem could lie anywhere, and the we need to have the wisdom to discern the problem, and make proper assumptions based on what we found. Yeah.
And like I said that it's not that every time things are not working. So it's our responsibility also as an L&D professional to accept the things which are working. You don't need to fix everything and think that everything is problematic. No, a lot of times there are processes, systems which are working really fine. Let's accept those. Let's build on our strengths and improve weaknesses. So, but when you start looking at everything as a problem area and you want to solve everything, that is the real challenge.
Do you think this tendency of wanting to solve everything comes from a place of certain insecurity, or wanting to prove myself that okay, I have done these many trainings and I've done these many things? Is it like is it? Yeah.
So yeah, so that's where we are coming back to being a strategic partner. When you are a strategic partner, the business goal and your goal try to match up somewhere. You can't be opposites. You have to be, complementing each other or support to each other. That's what a strategic partner is all about. Because then there is no checklist. Then what you're trying to do is just collaborating as an extended team of the business and try to help, solve, support, collaborate, partner.
Yeah.
When you have that mindset, the entire learning strategy changes, because now you are talking business, now you are an equal partner in that game. And when that is the situation, then you are not bothered about checklist. You are here to solve a problem. You are here to reach a goal. You are here to achieve results. And that's what matters. Whereas in a scenario of a problem, order taker, what you remain with is checklists, publishing calendars, doing programs here and there. But if you talk about net, what are you getting out of it? Maybe at times you don't have an answer. So the way you spoke about, connecting ROI with L&D in one of the pieces, I think that will only come. That will only come when you are partnering, because then it will make sense to the business. Then it will be helpful for you, and that is an outcome of what has happened. So you are not deliberately designing everything to talk about ROI. The ROI is coming by default, because the approach is totally different. So from that perspective, so you have a Kirkpatrick model for measuring effectiveness. You have Jack Phillips for measuring ROI, and there are so many Net Promoter Score, and you name it. So all those formulas are there, but then hand on your heart, you need to understand that, have I actually solved problem? Have I already reached there in terms of solving an issue? And that is what we are looking at and talking about. And there could be thousand ways of measuring ROI. I'm not denying that. But then I think that it will make sense only and only if it has solved some issue, some business problem, or contributing in some way or the other. Otherwise, the I've seen best of the systems, processes, procedures, practices, but net it boils down to a lot of things which are very very tactical. Things which are very very checklistish, in a way. So just a little bit of little change of perspective, and the entire game plan changes is what I'm looking at. And I think that's how we should look at also. So I have, that's the reason I have a little issue with all those vanilla programs which we do for the sake of trainings, which is more of an entertainment. And so I think we have to look at that. High time we have to look at that, and not just all these sort of programs for sales guys. Let's talk about functional development programs. I see a big gap in a lot of organizations when you talk about functional development programs, especially in service functions. Are we doing something to upgrade these guys, the teams? Are we doing something? We are talking, there's a great buzz about digitization. But, what about the basics? There's a guy who's working in your IT, finance, or HR. He's been through with his education some 15 years back. Where is he now in terms of the skills today? Is he upgrading himself, or are we doing anything as an L&D organization for upgrading those functional uh, personnel also. So I think holistically we have to look at it. Then only you can become a high impact learning organization.
Yeah. So, just if you just change gears a little bit and take this because so far we've spoken about diagnosis for sure. If we can touch upon the 70-20-10 thing that you spoke about, and then we'll move towards the whole ROI piece. So, can you just briefly talk about the 70-20-10 rule?
Sure. So a 70-20-10 experiential learning, when we talk about, we are looking at it from a perspective of where 10% is only training. And then you talk about 20% which is more on coaching or mentoring, and then a 70% which is more on on the job learning, or maybe something which is a big picture. Uh, so we have to look at it from that perspective of experiential learning and adult learning, the andragogy, the pedagogy, the heutagogy. We have to understand that how it works for person to person and for different age groups, for Gen Z, for Gen X, baby boomers, millennials. So the entire paradigm, when you look at all the aspects of the target audience, uh, it will be wrong if the language doesn't change, if the the rules of the game doesn't change. They have to be different because the target audience differs. The demographically there is a difference, and the approach has to be different for all. You just can't have a cookie cutter approach and then expect magic. That never happens. So that is the reason I'm saying, when you spoke about how we are looking at it from a perspective of 70-20-10, it's nothing but a way of looking at an intervention or a developmental plan. When you have those individual development plans for employees, you have to put it across that it should not be only training. It
So
has
Sunny,
to be
correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm mistaken here, but from my understanding or what I see around in the industry, and again these are broad strokes that I am painting with, but I feel that the 10 that you spoke about is actually 80. I mean there is a lot of focus on content and training, and very less focus on the peer-to-peer mentoring or coaching that you spoke about. So is that a fair assessment, or do you think I'm mistaken here?
that is what the hammer is. Talk about.
Right.
The hammer is training. So whatever I want to solve is with training. But if I have some other tools apart from hammer, then I would definitely love to use them also. But how many L&D people are exposed to that? How many people who call themselves L&D professionals are equipped with that, are aware of that, or are skilled on that? That is the real question. Forget about developing people, raising the bar for competencies. Uh, we as L&D professionals, have we upgraded ourselves, or are we using those primitive methods till today? How often we develop ourselves, upgrade ourselves, update ourselves? Because if we don't, then I think it's all gassy to talk about developing people and whatnot. So we have to be very, very, conscious and the L&D professional first, that how we are learning. Today we talk about different methodologies of learning. With digitization, a lot of things are changing. The entire landscape of learning is changing. Are we aware of that? Are we using AI, robotics, virtual reality, all those facets in learning today? I'm not saying all of them today, but are we on that path? Do we know what is the future workplace looks like? What is the future of learning? Are we aware of that? Are we on that path? Have we started with the automation within our learning and development domain? Or are we still using those, historic methods of processing and evaluating and measuring? So it starts from there actually. It starts from within. So it's inside out.
Yeah, yeah. That's a fair point. You need to walk the talk, and you need to change starts from within. So that's a well made point. So speaking of ROI, and so it's come up a few times, and you have also mentioned that the L&D team does need to be in a position where they can prove the value, where they can actually say that, hey, we solved this particular problem. But it seems that it's again, like, broad strokes, because I think you won't agree with this, Sunny, but I think most L&D professionals are of the opinion that it's hard to do. It's hard to measure the impact, and it's hard to measure the ROI. One of the reasons that comes up is the cultural reasons, that the organization just doesn't care. Just execute the program. Just take these 100 people through the training, and we don't really care about what happens next. So there is a cultural aspect to it, and then there is the aspect of the entire thing being so complex. So just to go back to the sales example, I might execute let's say, an intervention based on my diagnosis, that maybe, like, this particular skill was needed, and I trained them for that. This time I did use training, for example. But then someone else might come and say that, hey, you know what, the sales team also, we changed the product a little bit, because of which the sales has increased from 7% to 14%. So how much do I attribute to L&D? So that problem comes up again. So these are just a few objections, and if you could tackle these, maybe by using the Kirkpatrick, which is probably the most well known model, or in any way that you want. But how do we actually start measuring?
So I think it all boils down to how you want to look at it. Whenever we talk about measuring training effectiveness or ROI, a lot of people commit the mistake of looking at it from a perspective of money or figures, numbers, which is not true in a lot of cases. ROI can be in terms of maybe increased productivity. It can be in the form of cascading that knowledge to multiple people. It can be in the form of reducing costs. You know, so every time we talk about ROI or training effectiveness measurement, we think X money to Y money, which is not the case. There are a lot of other ways of looking at it, like a few of them which I just proposed to you. We do something very beautiful here at my organization. Whenever we are doing a training program, we ask the training participants to have two commitments, which must have emerged from two learnings of the entire program. And how would you like to implement those learnings into your work life, and how it will solve any problem or add value to the organization or yourself? It can be anything. So, maybe a behavioral program or a functional program or a technical program. There must be some learning. That's something which we are, accepting by default. And then how you have implemented those learnings in your work profile from today. The magical start, stop, change, continue. Uh, and how those learnings which you will start implementing, how will you measure in terms of how it will help, in your work profile? And that is, I think, the most simplistic and beautiful way of ROI measurement.
Yeah, sorry, I just jump in here to make sure that I've understood you correctly. What you are saying is that, after an intervention has been done, the simple thing to do would be just to go back to the participants or the learners, and ask them, like, what are the one or the two things that you have been able to grasp from this intervention, and how have you applied them? Is that what you?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And how you have applied or how you will implement those learnings, and then how it will, can be of some benefit to the organization or the individual.
Do you ask this question immediately after the training is done, or after, like, they have had a chance to implement it? Is it
No,
futuristic?
so the,
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
no, no. So it is right at the end of the training
Okay.
where they have understood the concepts, they have had their learnings, they can write their commitments, how they will do it, how it will impact, what is the current baseline which they will try to work on, and how much they will try to improve it. Let's say increase productivity, reduce cost, increase something, decrease something. And then there is a continuous follow up with them for with a gap of one month.
Okay.
After a month, then again after a month, then again after a month. See, so to say that how it is progressing. And they have mentors aligned with them, which are in a lot of cases majorly their reporting managers also, who will be responsible for helping them with by lending a hand in terms of that journey. So I think that is what I'm saying is the simplest way of looking at an ROI of an intervention. Apart from just, what happens is that people attend a program, there are happy sheets in terms of what was the program like, how was it, you liked it, enjoyed it, and that's it. I think a commitment on your learnings is very, very important, no matter how big or small that intervention was. And we should, track that. And you will be surprised to know that out of every batch of 20 odd people, there are at least 15 cases of showing some real time improvement, you know, in terms of their work, in terms of adding value to the organization, to the business, to their profiles.
But just to be the devil's advocate here, okay, just to be the devil's advocate, someone who has been through a program, and if you're taking the data from him, there is a big chance that the data is biased, right? Because I mean, he himself or she might be feeling that this training changed me, and maybe I'm being able to apply this, but maybe it's not actually happening in real time. So what do you recommend in such cases?
So in such cases, what we do is that, of course, when it is something figurative, we try to get it validated by the finance department of that business.
Okay.
We go to that extent. We want him to get that buy-in from him also in terms of, is it realistic? Is it possible? And this is not forced, they have to. So the entire piece is designed in such a manner, then there's a lot of self-introspection that happens. Where again, the idea is not to have a checklist of I have a commitment and I'll prove something, but a self-introspection in terms of, am I actually contributing post this program to my organization or to myself? And when you have this honest self-introspection, then what you write makes a lot of sense to you first as an individual, and then to L&D, then to the organization.
Right.
That entire piece of, making you ready to accept certain things is the process. That is the catharsis which we talk about, where you have been trained, or you've been kind of coached in certain manner, that by the end of the day you will not bluff. What you write is what you mean, and what you mean is business.
Yeah. So you spoke that this is you mentioned that this is probably the simplest method or the way to measure. Maybe a layer of complexity would be to talk to the mentors or the reporting managers that they have. Apart from that,
We do that.
sorry.
Yeah, we do that. We do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
We speak to the mentor also, the reporting manager, how is it progressing, how has been the change post the program, any inputs. So there has to be a lot of dialogue between the participant, the manager, and as a catalyst, we try to create those platforms where there is a dialogue which happens, which generally doesn't happen. In a lot of organization, it happens at the time of PMS, where you talk about what have you achieved and what was the plan. But with every training, we try to get that dialogue happen, and that really helps, from a long term perspective.
Yeah. So from if we had to go beyond these these measures that you mentioned, do you think there are other, perhaps a little more complex ways of measuring value, or have we covered them all?
I think there is no complex way to measure, but there are different ways of measuring.
Okay.
Kirk metric is one way, the way I said, level 1, 2, 3, 4, where it measures your reactions, your behavior, results, learnings, and that is a great way which a lot of people across the globe have adopted in terms of measuring the effectiveness of training. The other one is Jack Phillips level 5, which we call as ROI. There is a formula for it and how you can calculate it. Anybody can Google and they can find it out. Then there is a net promoter score, where the people who are the promoters of the program, they talk about it, and again there's a formula for calculating it. So it's totally up to you as an L&D professional. How do you want to look at it? What kind of unit you want to measure? What happiness? For example, Bhutan, they don't measure GDP. What matters to them is gross happiness index. So again, one of the examples. So as an organization, what matters to you? How do you want to measure? What do you want to measure? That's totally up to you. And I will definitely agree that there are a lot of ways of doing it and measuring it. There is no one particular way, but multiple ways of measuring it. But it has to be your call to understand what you want to measure. Like for example, two, three, individuals. Let's talk about. Somebody is conscious of measuring their weight. Somebody is, conscious of measuring their, let's say, height. That have I grown in length or not? So it matters person to person. Likewise,
Yeah. What is the one skill that you think all L&D leaders need to start, learning today?
learnability.
Okay, you have to unpack that a little bit.
So, as an L&D person, I have to be, learning skills should be my topmost agenda for myself. How am I learning? You know, so am I learning? Am I upgrading myself the way I spoke about? I see that piece missing in a lot of people of this domain. Uh, they don't upgrade, they don't update, and then they face challenges. Uh, and they operate at a very, very suboptimal level. But when you constantly upgrade, update yourself, and again, it's of great importance not just to you but your workplace also, but with the people you are working with, your team members, your peers, you know, you can definitely that adds a lot of value. So you have to invest in that, in developing yourself first. Your learnability, your learning skills, your learning aptitude and attitude is very, very important. If it is not there in you, let's not expect this from anybody else. But if it is there within me, then I can definitely demonstrate how to tackle it, how to go about it, how to achieve it. So I would strongly recommend that all the L&D professionals must upgrade themselves on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think we have completed a full circle here. We started with the premise, and then we spoke about diagnosis, the 70-20-10 framework. We also spoke about measurement. So this was so much fun, and I personally learned a lot, Sunny. That we can always have a part two where we zoom in on one of these things for sure. But what I like about interacting with you is that you're not short of opinions, and you don't conform to what others are conforming to. You like to define your own path, so that has been one of the highlights of our conversation. So thank you so much for bringing so much value to this, Sunny.
My pleasure. It was a great interaction, and I hope anybody who sees this podcast can, pick a thing or two from here and maybe have some learning and can add some value to themselves. A big thank you to you.
For sure, for sure. Thanks, Sunny, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye bye.